him bail, we'll tell you why. Plus, the big lifestyle audit gospel.
Hii gari ambayo unapeleka na usijaribu kuweka kwa jina ya bibi yako au mtoto yako, tutajua ni yako. Ulitoa wapi?
But not even the government is a believer.
There's a verse in the Bible that says the flesh is willing, but the spirit is not.
NTV Tonight with Ken Mijungu.
A very, very good evening and welcome to our broadcast. My co-pilot tonight is David Agundoa. We begin tonight with new evidence that suggests the investigations into the killing of Joseph Nia Cooney, that is the son of city lawyer Asa Nia Cooney, could have been bungled. Senior police officers are on the spot after the Director of Public Prosecution, Nordin Haji, and the DCI Director, George Kinoti, recalled the case file and disowned the manslaughter charges that they say was hurriedly preferred against the city lawyer. And as NTV's Mel Miendo reports, both DPP and DCI have reassigned new officers to handle the case and will be preferring charges against their new officers who initially handled those investigations. And of course, Mel tells me she's still working on that story, but we're getting back with it. So let's move on. So we asked the question, was it murder or a manslaughter charge? The Director of Criminal Investigations has disowned the manslaughter charge, interdicted senior investigating officers, and ordered a public inquiry into what they call major cover-up in the murder case. In the Daily Nation tomorrow, read about what is shaping up to be one of the biggest conspiracies to defeat justice, how two police officers attempted to bungle that case, and the dirt on senior officers at the Office of Public Prosecution who filed a weak manslaughter charge against the lawyer, that's Asa Nia Cooney, before they even got the ballistic evidence and post-mortem examination report. Do not miss your copy tomorrow. And of course, we're getting back to that story, but first let's move to the judiciary. And it's the latest plan to purchase high-end luxury motor vehicles in the next financial year. It continues to elicit mixed reactions, with sections of the public castigating the judiciary for being tone deaf to the country's financial situation. But as NTV's Brenda Wanga now reports, the judiciary is on the well-trodden path, one paved by the executive and, of course, the legislature.
The third arm of government, the judiciary's plans to purchase 232 vehicles at the cost of 2.1 billion shillings may have caused uproar amongst the general population, but it has its fair share of supporters.
No, it's not right.
There are certain offices that must be treated with the decorum that is required of that office and facilitated in a way that earns that office respect.
In its defense, the judiciary insists that the cars are a necessity if it staffers to oversee the expeditious dispensation of justice. Be that as it may, the desire to acquire new vehicles seems to be flying in the face of austerity measures that have been undertaken time and again, perhaps falsely, by the government. Indeed, in 2009, when serving as Minister for Finance, Uhuru Kenyatta won rare praise from Kenyans when he issued a directive to replace fuel guzzlers with Passats that came with engine capacities of less than 1,800 cc's. Retailing at 5 million shillings then, the plan was to save the government at least $27 million. Then, hundreds of the so-called guzzlers were then dumped at the judiciary's Milimani courts and auctioned. However, things have slowly returned to the status quo.
I fully support the recommendations of Sarah Sarem that have cut the salaries of all public officers from the president all the way down.
As President Uhuru Kenyatta led from the front by promising to take a pay cut as a means of encouraging the public sector to stem the runaway public wage bill that was estimated to have hit 650 billion shillings by mid last year. What was clear was the unrelenting greed by public servants, particularly the legislature, to earn more. This greed provoking a stern warning from the president.
I swear I shall not sign that law.
But the president has been seen to undercut his own plea to reduce the public wage by increasing the size of his second-term cabinet. From an initial 18 ministries with 18 cabinet secretaries and an equal number of principal secretaries in 2013, the president's second cabinet grew to 22 cabinet secretaries, an equal number of cabinet administrative secretaries, and 38 principal secretaries, more than doubling the perks paid to the executive arm of government. Many of those appointed to the ambiguous CAS posts, political cronies who faced to clinch political seats in the elections. The judiciary, long seen as the least greedy of the arms of government, now seems to be adopting the mantra, if you can't beat them, join them. Brenda Wanga, NTV.
Someone might argue that E200 is just basically 1,998 cc, so it falls below the what you'd call a fuel guzzler. But the cost of buying an E-Class, and the government buys only brand new cars, that's a 2019, is around 11 million. So even if you look at the cost, it's still a lot of money to spend on motor vehicles. Right, let's move on. And in a couple of weeks' time, it will be a year since President Uhuru Kenyatta declared that he will lead from the front in subjecting himself and those around him to lifestyle audit. Now, going ahead to invite the public to blow the whistle on public officers living lavishly outside their means. But besides a passing mention 6 months ago at the Maize Day celebrations, not much else has been said on the subject. A loud silence that communicates to the working nation that what they have to look forward to is a future much like that depicted in Animal Farm. Wanjiku breaking her back to finance the excesses of the entitled, a classic tale told or retold by NTV's Olive Barrows now.
Hii nyumba, pesa, hii mshahara ndio hii ulinunua namna gani? Hii ulinunua namna gani? Hii gari ambayo unapeleka na usijaribu kuweka kwa jina ya bibi yako au mtoto yako, tutajua ni yako, ulitoa wapi? You must explain. Na ule wa kwanza kufanywa lifestyle audit ni mimi, kwa sababu mimi ndio mfanyikazi number 1. Si ndio hiyo? Yes. Mimi, alafu tuende kwa huyu, alafu tuende kwa governor, alafu tuende kwa masharia. Kila mtu aseme hii maisha unaishi kwa njia gani? Si ni namna hiyo? Hii pesa unatoa wapi? Na kama huna jibu, kuna mwingine kamiti anakugojea huko na atakupatia jibu yako.
Words spoken with conviction, but as Kenyans have come to learn, the country in many ways personifies the classic Orwellian tale, Animal Farm. And when a policy threatens to upturn the apple cart, history has taught us its shelf life is determined by political expediency.
Before President Uhuru made the statement in 2018 May that is going to have this lifestyle audit starting with him, at that time when Kenyans were declared the most optimistic people in the world, President Kibaki then had come up in December 2002 to say that they were going to clean house, corruption is going to be a thing of the past, and everybody was going to tell Kenyans how they acquired their wealth.
But as the popular Kenyan proverb goes, corruption fought back.
When Githongo himself tried to really take the issue of anti-corruption and tackling corruption through the lifestyle audit of senior officers who had been implicated in embezzling millions of shillings through the Anglo leasing scandal, he became the casualty. So he was forced to flee the country, and we know how that ended. So from 2002 to 2018, we can see that the intentions have been there.
So when President Uhuru Kenyatta gave his version of the I Have a Dream speech, it did little to inspire confidence in those with a working knowledge of Kenya's political landscape.
There's a verse in the Bible that says the flesh is willing, but the spirit is not. There is no will, whether in the spirit, political or otherwise, to tackle any of these issues anytime soon.
And going by the writing on the wall, the diviners of the political winds say not much cause for optimism going into the future.
So the president should have taken advantage of the goodwill as existing at the time that between March last year and now, when handshake was favoring him and the sun was shining, to make sure that we have done the bulk of the things that would ordinarily be difficult to do.
The consensus appearing to be that we should not hold our collective breath on the promise of a lifestyle audit to discourage corruption.
Do we even understand what we want to do when we're talking about a lifestyle audits. Are there parameters in place for us to understand that when you're doing a lifestyle audit, this is exactly what we are looking for? I don't think we have that.
Olive Barrows, NTV.
Right, very interesting. Years later, he was the finance minister then, now he's the president. Same thing. Let's go back to our top story. And tonight, new evidence suggests that investigations into the killing of Joseph Nia Cooney, that's the son of city lawyer Asa Nia Cooney, could have been bungled. Senior police officers are on the spot after the Director of Public Prosecution, that's Nordin Haji, and DCI Director George Kinoti recalled the case file and disowned the manslaughter charge that they say was hurriedly preferred against the lawyer. And as NTV's Mel Miendo reports, both the DPP and the DCI have reassigned new officers to handle the case and will be preferring charges against their own officers who initially handled those same very investigations.
City lawyer Asa Nyakundi says he accidentally shot and killed his son Joseph Bogonko, but his troubles may just be beginning. Less than a week ago, Nyakundi appeared before the Kiambu Law Courts and pleaded not guilty to a manslaughter charge. He was freed on a 1 million shilling bond with a surety of the same amount or an alternative cash bail of 300,000 shillings. But now the tables have turned. DPP Nordin Haji and DCI Director George Kinoti have recalled his case file, citing grave concerns with how it was handled. The two say there were unacceptable delays in concluding the ballistic report, arguing that the decision to charge Nyakundi with manslaughter was too rushed. Kinoti and Haji said the manslaughter charges were preferred arbitrarily against the city lawyer, yet the forensic evidence clearly supports a murder charge. Following the evident gaps in administering prudence and transparency in the Nyakundi case, the DPP and DCI have recalled all their officers assigned to the case and have reassigned it to new ones. Investigations to establish the culpability of some officers in what appears to have been attempts at a cover-up have been launched, and the officers could face charges of conspiracy to defeat justice. Nyakundi, who willingly opted to move out of his Muthaiga residence, has since rented an apartment in Kilimani as he is not allowed near his home or family members. Nyakundi's wife Lydia and eldest son Noah have been listed as key state witnesses in the case. The lawyer spent 6 weeks in hospital over high blood pressure. Police responsible for the case played cat and mouse games with journalists when he finally appeared in court. The lawyer was first presented to Makadara Law Courts, then eventually to Kiambu, perhaps in an attempt to ensure the case did not receive any media attention. Sources revealed to NTV that the case had been compromised from the very start, and hence the reluctance to open it up to public scrutiny. Mel Miendo, NTV.
Right, a good move there by DPP and the DCI to get justice for that family. The Anti-Corruption Court, based in Milimani, issuing stringent bond terms against high-profile suspects implicated in multi-million graft cases. Now, the bond terms not only guarantee the suspects' attendance during trial, but also ensures that they don't erode public confidence in the administration of justice. NTV's Seth Olale highlights some of the tough bond terms for key suspects, including former Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero, and which have forced them to be remanded longer than expected.
Former National Lands Commission Chairman Muhammad Swazuri remains locked up at the Industrial Area Remand Prison despite being released on a 12 million shillings cash bail or an alternative bond of 30 million shillings imposed by the Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi. Swazuri, together with other senior officials at NLC, were arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit an offence of corruption through fraudulently paying 109 million shillings for alleged compulsory acquisition of land from Tornado carriers on behalf of Kenya National Highways Authority, KENHA. The former university professor filed an application before Justice Mumbi Ngugi, complaining that 12 million shillings cash bail was unreasonably high and should be revised downwards.
In the present case, I am not persuaded that the threshold for denial of bail has been sufficiently met by the prosecution, going by the information presented to the court. The prosecution has nonetheless succeeded in demonstrating the gravity and the seriousness of these offences as a factor that this court must irresistibly give adequate consideration in fixing suitable terms, bail terms and conditions.
Swazuri argued that the cash bail or alternative 30 million shillings bond imposed on him by Chief Magistrate Lawrence Mugambi was unjust, exorbitant, and in contravention of Article 49 of the Constitution. The ruling on the application will be delivered on Thursday, 2nd May 2019, meaning the former NLC boss was in custody over the Easter holidays and may be remanded further after he denied the corruption charges against him last week, Thursday. NTV has since learned that the Anti-Corruption Court based in Milimani has resolved to impose stringent bond terms against high-profile suspects implicated in multi-million graft cases. The bond terms not only guarantee the suspects' attendance during trial, but also ensures that they don't erode public confidence in the administration of justice. Although former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero's 8 million shillings cash bail, or a bond equivalent to 20 million shillings, is largely viewed as reasonable terms, the former county boss was on Tuesday evening frantically marshalling the funds in order to secure his release before Labor Day, which is a public holiday.
The country has been seeing an alarming rise in white-collar crimes, which have affected the fiber of the country's economic structure. Incontrovertibly, economic crimes have serious repercussions on the development of the country as a whole. Economic crimes constitute a class apart and need to be visited with different approach in the matter of bail.
The former Nairobi governor is also free on bond in yet another case implicating him in an alleged loss of 213 million shillings. Now, the pre-trial of the second case is set to happen on June 4th, 2019. Seth Olale, NTV at the Milimani Law Courts, Nairobi County.
In a rather unfortunate incident, a Kenya Defence Force soldier who killed himself after killing his lover and two relatives in Juakali, that's in Eldoret, has been described as problematic or a problematic person by the neighbors who knew him. Now, KDF officer Aaron Tioni was involved in a confrontation with his lover, which escalated to the triple murders and suicide. NTV's Lois Wangoi with the details of a disturbing incident and a man described as troubled.
Aaron Tioni, a KDF officer attached to Lanet Barracks, arrived at his auntie's home in the wee hours of the morning from what happened to have been a night of drinking liquor. He demanded that his auntie Rose Sang wakes up and opens her door to resolve a quarrel he was having with his lover Dorcas Lorino, a KDF officer too. His auntie requested the pair to allow her to sort the issue after sunrise, but she had to quickly change her stance when Tioni's confrontation with his lover got heated. When she opened the door, it was too late. Tioni had shot his lover to death. He then shot and killed his auntie as she tried to escape, and later drove to his uncle's house, spraying him with bullets and killing him too.
Ameua mama yake, ameua papa yake, ameua girlfriend yake na kujiua. Sasa kama alikuwa ni mtu anataka kujiua, si akijiua mpeke yake kabisa.
The late Aaron was an orphan and many had thought that his late auntie was his mom. She had raised him after his parents' death when he was in primary school. Neighbors say Tioni rebelled at an early age after losing his parents. His family found reprieve after he was admitted to the KDF a few years after clearing Standard 8, but they note some aspects of his indisciplined nature did not fade away as they had expected.
Alikuwa mtu ya hasira. Alikuwa mtu ya hasira. Nakumbuka tu. Hasira.
Tioni was a married man and his family lives in Ziwa. The lady he killed was not his wife. 24 hours before he killed his 3 victims and committed suicide, he had been on a drinking spree in the company of his lover, who was also a KDF officer.
Sababu one of the family members tulikutana naye asubuhi akaniambia walilewa pamoja almost mpaka saa 3 akarudi kulewa. So wakati amerudi hata asubuhi nasikia alikuwa mlevi.
Tionyi was using a KDF vehicle, and inside it there was a work ticket that showed he had been assigned liaison duties between Eldoret, Busia and Lokichogio. It explained why he was in possession of a loaded M4 rifle outside Lanet Barracks, a dangerous weapon in the hands of a trained man under the influence of alcohol. Initial investigations indicate a crime of passion. However, the police are seeking to understand why Aaron also went on to kill his uncle, who was about 2 kilometers away from his auntie's house, where he had had a confrontation with his lover before becoming trigger happy. Lois Wangori, NTV Eldoret.
Very, very sad story there, but it's Tuesday, and if it's Tuesday, you know it's a sidebar. And tonight we're talking about money or the Bible, the preachings or the gospel or politicking. And with me in studio will be Bishop David Murithi of House of Grace, Richard Takim, apostle leader, and he's also an author. We'll have Bishop Kefa Omai and Reverend Elias Otieno Agola. They'll be coming up to talk about all this.
NTV Tonight with Ken Mijungu.
And thank you for keeping it NTV Tonight. David Agondoa is with me in studio. The Kenya's economy expanded by 6.3% in 2018, fueled by growth in the agriculture, manufacturing and transport sectors, according to the 2019 economic survey. But as Victor Kiprop reports, the number of jobs created remain way below the target, and tens of companies and small businesses are winding up or issuing profit warnings, painting a picture of an expanding economy but with shrinking job opportunities.
Until early last year, Geoffrey Kipkurui Koech was another young promising Kenyan attached to what was then East Africa's largest retailer, Nakumatt Supermarkets, with more than 63 stores across the region.
I worked for Nakumatt for 4.5 years in different departments. My latest department was a marketing department as a marketing representative.
At the time, Kipkurui reckons life was good.
Nilikuwa nakaa nyumba ya around 12k. So nilikuwa nakaa nyumba mzuri. Familia na ilikuwa mzuri, ilikuwa stable.
The rain began beating as the elephant retailer began to choke in debts, exiting regional markets and closing branches one after another. Before long, Kipkurui and most of the company's 10,000 employees had to make the tough decision of either resigning or working without pay. Kipkurui chose the former, and life took an unfortunate turn.
Status changed drastically. Yeah, kwa sababu sasa hiyo nyumba ilibidi ifungwe. Sasa unalipa na nini? Nyumbani nao wale watu walikuwa wanakufanyia kazi na walikosa unga yao.
The turbulence in the retail sector forced many workers out of jobs with little prospects for employment.
Despite the government's promise to create at least 1.3 million jobs every year, the economy only managed to create at least 840,000 jobs last year. That's according to the economic survey of 2019. Some of the jobs which job seekers, including Kipkurui, now say are nowhere to be seen.
Maneno kama haya naweza sema ni story kwa sababu reality kwa ground hakuna kazi. Kazi yenyewe siambiwa ndio hizi kazi zilikreatiwa. Kama wanasema wamecreate jobs, itakuwa ni mzuri wakienda in detail watuambie ni kazi gani wamecreate.
In 2018, Kenya's economy grew by 6.3%, but of the 840,000 jobs created, 83.6% of them were in the informal sector, highlighting the inability of the formal sector to absorb the huge number of job seekers and raising concerns over the overall quality of jobs in the country.
Poultry workers. These are women who are cutting the chickens and packing them, and we buy them in the supermarkets. Dolores, one woman we work with there, told us that she and her co-workers have to wear diapers to work because they are not allowed toilet breaks. This is in the richest country in the world. That's the job. Those are the jobs we are being told about, that globalization is bringing jobs. The quality of the jobs matter. It matters. These are not jobs of dignity.
For now, the father of one and procurement graduate stays at home looking after his son in their single room shared with a friend in Mathare, uncertain of what the future holds for him and his young family. Victor Kiprop, NTV.
Victor Kiprop, really? In a suit pulling a cut? You should have done a t-shirt and the jeans, but a good story from you, Victor Kiprop. All right, a planned demonstration by the Red Vest movement failed to take off after police lobbed tear gas to disperse the activists who had assembled at Uhuru Park ahead of the planned across Nairobi's central business district. Now, the civil society activists want President Kenyatta to resign if he cannot fight corruption in his government. NTV's Helen Wanjohi with those details.
The all too familiar tear gas clouds to signal demonstrations the government does not approve of. The Red Vest movement activists are trying to stage some form of demonstration against rampant corruption in government. But police restricted the movement to a small corner of Uhuru Park. The activists claim the government's war against corruption is a charade.
Pesa ndogo kwa polisi, pesa ndogo kwa wananchi, ushuru mkubwa, KPA pia inauzwa, viswahili vingi, wanauza hii nchi, mabwenyenye, na hususan wanasiasa na watu wao.
Ufisadi lazima tupigane nao sisi kama Wakenya. Hakuna yeyote ambaye atatoka nchi nyingine aje kutusaidia.
They claim the Huduma number is a government plan to monitor the poor so that they are forced to pay taxes. Another government initiative they are against is the housing tax levy. They claim it isn't fair for the government to sit down and deduct 1.5% of the taxpayer's salary without public participation. The move that was to give a voice to voiceless was cut short by the police as they were only allowed to hold their demos within Uhuru Park. The activists' planned march was however disrupted and one of them, Beatrice Wathera, arrested.
Today we gather here as citizens of this country, fed up with wanton looting of public funds and casual and cosmetic response that receives from public officers.
Tunataka revolution kwa hii nchi. Kama Uhuru Kenyatta haezi kuongoza nchi, aache. Amechaguliwa kuprotect sisi wananchi wanyonge, lakini hivi sasa tunaona watu wanaumia pakubwa kwa sababu ya uongozi duni.
The activists had called out to all Kenyans to join them today in the march, but only a handful heeded the call. The Red Vest movements, as they are calling themselves, say that the protest will happen every month. They say not even use of force by the police will slow them down. Their mission, ensure all corrupt government officials are behind bars. Helen Wanjohi, NTV.
And trending on top on Twitter is #FreeBetty. If you're wondering why they're talking about freeing Betty, well, it's because of that story. She was arrested. She's one of the participants. She was speaking right there. The identity of the KPA official reportedly behind the 1 million shilling bribe meant to compromise the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission detectives remains unknown. A woman who was arrested with the 1 million shilling bribe is said to have confessed that she was acting on behalf of a senior KPA official who owns a clearing and forwarding company that has been doing business at the port. The bribe was meant to influence investigations into the 40 billion shilling tender for the construction of Kipevu Oil Terminal. Detectives have not yet relayed any information about that lady, fearing that such an action might jeopardize the investigations. The SEC detectives say they are almost ready to submit their conclusion to their headquarters right here in Nairobi. Now, the suspect is still in custody and will likely be arraigned on Thursday. Time now for another break. When we come back, Julian Samboko will be right here in studio with all the business stories. Stay with us.
ugali anytime soon. This is after the Ministry of Agriculture agreed to release 3 million bags of maize to millers starting next week. This resolve was made at a meeting with millers at the ministry today, where the government agreed to release grain at 2,300 shillings per bag. The grain will be of grades 1, 2 and 3 specifically for milling for human consumption, a move intended to bring down the cost of maize meal, which has skyrocketed over the last few weeks. The 3 million bags are expected to last 5 weeks, at which point the government hopes farmers will release the grain they are hoarding. About a week ago, a similar meeting was held at the ministry and resolved to release 2 million bags of grade 3 and 4 of maize, but that has since been reviewed. And on to the capital markets. Kenya Airways steered further into headwinds in 2018, posting a loss after tax of 7.6 billion shillings compared to 6.4 billion in the same period in 2017. This deepening loss was driven by a 44% growth in operating costs to 115 billion shillings.
Despite restating its loss after tax for 2017 from the earlier reported 6 billion shillings to 6.4 billion shillings, Kenya Airways still saw its net loss position deteriorate by double digits, deepening by 18% to 7.6 billion. This loss comes at a time when the airline has revised its financial year end from 31st of March to 31st of December, with the financials released today covering 12 months period as opposed to the traditional 9. The management has characterized 2018 as a daunting year, despite the launch of non-stop flights to New York.
The total operating costs were of course higher, and they were higher not only to the increase of the fuel, but also to the fact that we invested. And this is where you see part of the New York investment, but also of all the other things that we have done.
Chairman Michael Joseph singled out the controversy around the proposed public-private partnership between Kenya Airways and the Kenya Airports Authority over the management of the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport as a factor that will have an impact on the future performance of the airline.
We were under a lot of media scrutiny, definitely towards the end of 2018, about the proposal to do a PPP with KAA for the Jomo Kenyatta Airport. Unfortunately, a lot of the media was wrong and erroneous and just very exciting for everybody to read, but not exactly accurate.
KQ's proposal for the management of JKIA has been thrown into disarray following the Kenya Airports Authority's rejection of the proposal, questioning the airline's capacity to deliver on the same.
Airways, the share price has declined by as much as 40% since the start of the year. And staying with results, Mumias Sugar posted a loss after tax of 1.5 billion shillings for the 6 months ended December 2018, an improvement from the 1.9 billion shillings posted in the same period in 2017. This reduction in loss was enabled by a 46% decline in the cost of sales to stand at 948 million shillings. Mumias Sugar, however, registered a paltry revenue of 26 million shillings, posting a 96% drop from the same period in 2017. This drop in revenue has been attributed to stoppage in production lines as the miller grappled with adverse financial position and stiff competition from cheap imports. The company's share price has dipped by 36% since the start of 2019, shaving 320 million shillings off shareholders' wealth. And that's it for the business news. We now take a look at the financial report. Just before we let you go, let's take a look at matters prices. Inflation has hit a 12-month high of 6.6% this month, rising from 4.4% recorded last month. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says the increase is attributed to the drought conditions that prevailed in the better part of the month, leading to increases in the cost of food. But as Lillian Carey reports, Kenyans will continue to stretch themselves thin to live within their current wages as the Federation of Kenya Employers maintains that the economy cannot afford wage increases.
The ballooning cost of food, coupled with an increase in fuel and power, have driven the inflation in the country to increase by 2.13% to 6.58%, hitting a 12-month high. The inflation rate reveals that Kenyans are on the verge of losing their spending power, with tomatoes, sifted maize flour, kales, potatoes and loose maize grain recording an increase of over 16 shillings. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics also noted that fuel, gas, water, electricity and housing index increased by 0.93% in April compared to March 2019, mainly due to higher cost of rent and electricity in the country. But even as this persists, Kenyans will continue tightening their belts to tackle the battered economy, with employers unreluctant to increase employee wages.
The Federation of Kenya Employers strongly opposes this request by the Secretary General of KOTU, as the government has no mandate to increase general wages for the private sector. This is a matter that is governed by voluntary negotiations between the parties in the case of unionizable workers.
The employers also oppose the proposed levies on employers and an increase in the statutory minimum wages ahead of tomorrow's Labor Day celebrations.
There is a proposal in Parliament to increase the NITA fund levy by 100%. There is a proposal to implement the 6% National Social Security Fund levy. There are also proposals that are being made to increase the National Hospital Insurance Fund.
The Federation of Kenyan Employers has said that the constant increase in wages and levies is having a negative impact on employers. FKE says that the high cost of labor is causing a depression on job creation. Lillian Carey, NTV.
And on that note of wages, we wrap up the business news. That's as a good teaser for tomorrow's conversation regarding Labor Day.
Polytechnic, a center of excellence in innovative training and technological advancement, invites qualified candidates for May 2019 intake for certificate, diploma and higher diploma training in the following courses: mechanical engineering, applied sciences, civil and building technology, liberal studies, electrical and electronic engineering, chemical technology, entrepreneurship and human resource, health sciences, hospitality and confectionery sciences, business studies, computing and information technology. Registration is ongoing. Apply now. The Eldoret National Polytechnic. Ufundi kwa maendeleo.
John suffers from indigestion. His twin James suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action. If symptoms persist, seek medical advice.
It's about 6 minutes to 10 p.m. We still have the sports, but let's talk about the torrential rains which pounded many parts of the country. They resulted into flood waters, overtopping bridges, cutting off highways, destroying structures and disrupting business and displacing people. Scores of passengers and traders plying the Kibwezi-Kitui route was stranded after a section of the road was cut off by floods. And dozens of people in Maungu, that's in Voi sub-county, have been rendered homeless after their houses were swept away by the flash floods.
Dozens of passengers and motorists plying the Kibwezi-Kitui route were stranded for hours after River Semea burst its banks. Motorists plying the route were not able to use the drift along the busy highway as the surging waters flooded the entire road, cutting off the intersection from Kibwezi to Kitui.
Nimetransport simiti kutoka Nairobi na nilikuwa na expect nifika hapa mapema nirudi Nairobi tena, lakini kufika hapa tumepata mto imefurika, maji ni mingi.
Hatujui tutafanya nini, mto imefurika na ni hasara kwetu.
Travelers in a 46-seater matatu escaped death when raging floods threatened to sweep away their vehicle in Kibwezi. The matatu got stuck in the middle of the swelling river. The passengers camped out of the vehicle and swam to safety. The matatu had to be pulled by a bulldozer. The Kenya National Highways Authority has urged motorists to be cautious as they approach the various drifts along the road which are prone to flooding. Residents now want the contractor to speed up the construction of the bridge at Semea River to enable motorists use the road uninterrupted. At the same time, more than 30 families in Voi sub-county were on Monday night forced to sleep in the cold after their houses were washed away by floods after heavy rains. The families from Sofia, Tanzania and Maungu are in need of food, shelter and clean drinking water after their household properties were destroyed by the floods.
Lakini hayo maji yameanza kutoka saa 10 mpaka saa 7 usiku. Tuko kwa maji. Imeingia ndani ya nyumba. Hata kupika hatujapika. According to the residents, most of their farms were swept away by floods, especially their maize farms, leading to fears of food shortage in the near future.
Right, time for another break, but when we come back, Sean Cadavelis is in studio with all the sports.
And a very good evening to you. I'm Sean Carter-Villis with the latest sports news. Now, the Inspector General of Police, Hilary Mutyambai, today held a meeting with former 1500 meters champion Asbel Kiprop. Kiprop, who was 1 week ago banned by the IAAF for 4 years for use of a banned substance, EPO, took to social media on Saturday to vent. In a post that got Kenyans worried, Kiprop asked the National Police Service to take away his gun and also asked the IAAF to come for the medals he's won. However, the IG stated that Kiprop, who's a chief inspector, is a national treasure that should not be abandoned by Kenyans despite his current tribulations. London Marathon champion Bridget Koskei has seemingly ruled herself out of the IAAF World Championship set for Doha in September. Bridget, who set a personal best time, also contends that she has the potential to run even faster. Ida Waringa has the details.
From London with success, the youngest woman to ever win the London Marathon, Bridget Koskei, arrived in the country after her maiden win in the English capital. Despite her exploits in London on Sunday and in Chicago 6 months ago, Bridget has ruled herself out of the biggest sporting event of the year, the World Championships in Doha.
Sitakubali sababu sitakuwa ready ama nitategemea tu vile mazoezi nitakuwa.
Bridget clocked a personal best time of 2 hours, 18 minutes and 20 seconds, and she believes she could have even been faster.
Si tungefuata basemakers tungekimbia best time. So shida ni yetu tukufuata basemakers, bado tulikuwa tunaokopana nani anaenda mbele nani aende mbele.
Having ruled supreme on the streets of London, defeating experienced athletes like Vivian Cheriot and Mary Keitany, Bridget, who trains in Capside, is ready for even stiffer competition.
Can't fear anybody so long as the body move, nobody can fear. I just wanted to be a winner. A winner.
Marathon world record holder Eliud Kipchoge, who bagged his 4th title in London, is expected in the country on Friday. Ida Waringa, NTV.
Now, the issue of payments of allowances to sports people continues to elicit debate, even as the government has plans to change the way it disperses funds to sports people. This comes in the wake of the team to the Africa Youth Athletics Championship staging a sit-in last week, demanding their pending allowances. The government has paid athletes who represented the country in the recent Africa Youth Athletics Championship in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. This is according to the CEO of the Kenya Academy of Sports, Gordon Olwach, who is speaking on NTV today.
Being specific to this particular case of athletes, yes, the ministry that same Thursday disbursed the money, which I think has now hit the account through the federation, because now it was not possible to pay the athletes because they didn't have bank accounts.
Team Kenya bagged 19 gold, 16 silver and 10 bronze in both the under-18 and under-20 categories. These 72 athletes were reportedly each owed 82,000 shillings, and they staged a sit-in last week demanding their dues. Even as Olwach, who's a smooth-talking veteran sports administrator, made his claim, it has emerged that the backlog of payment to sports people is long. The government is yet to pay athletes who competed at the IAAF World Junior Athletics Championship in Finland last year, the Africa Cross Country Championship staged in Algeria last May, and the 2019 IAAF World Cross Country Championships held in Denmark last month.
It does not order well when the federations are always blamed. But the question is this: we have the athletes, we gave the information to the ministry last year so that the athletes can be paid.
And even as the government grapples with the clearing of the backlog of monies owed, there are plans to change the modality of payment going forward.
We are working on a policy of how to pay the athletes and working on the modalities of paying all the athletes. And I want to give credit to our new cabinet secretary, yes, Ambassador Amina Mohammed. She has put her foot down and she said in future, going forward, all athletes must be paid before they leave this country.
With athletes prepping for the World Championships in Doha in September, the government has its work cut out to rebuild the eroded trust and ensure Kenyan sportspeople continue flying the flag high globally. The under-15 and under-13 national teams will benefit from a partnership between the Football Kenya Federation and Wadi Degla that will see the teams use Wadi Degla's state-of-the-art training facilities.
They have been competing against the Barcelonas, the Shakhtar Donetsk, the big clubs of the world. You cannot compete against them when you do not use this kind of facilities. because they're the best in the country. We selected 24 kids out of 17,000 kids. We are going to select again this year 24 kids at under 13 who will again come and access this facility at Wadidegla. This is so important because we give them the basics. We begin to compete against the best at this age. We grow them because the problem in Kenya has been we have the best kids at under 13. At under 17, we never win anything. There's a period between 13 and 17 where we lose our kids.
Now, in the NBA semi-final playoffs early tomorrow morning, the Milwaukee Bucks host the Boston Celtics, trailing by 1 game as the Golden State Warriors seek to extend their lead against the Houston Rockets. Halima Aden will grace the latest issue of Sports Illustrated swimsuit wearing a bikini in what is the first for the magazine. The feature which was shot in Kenya where Aden was born in the Kakuma refugee camp.
So I can't believe I'm here.
Back to you, Ken.
And thank you very much, Sean Kadavelis with the sports, and thanks to David Agundoa, who has been my co-pilot tonight on NTV Tonight. But coming straight after this is Sidebar, because we have to talk about issues that make sense to you. And this evening we are talking about the Bible, the money or the Bible. Are we trading the church and sermons for politics in church? And we talk about money. Do they even need the money? All that question is being answered tonight, and my guests are already seated right here. Stay with us. We're back in a moment.
This is NTV.